Welcome to another great Bo class. This is a Kata class. We're going to work on Bo Kata 4. We're going to get started with a quick warm-up and then move into it. We're going to be reviewing the whole kata all the way through, talking about some important points and also the most common errors that I see students make on their own exams or demonstrating this kata in general, so that we can really fix some of those things, and then actually working the kata with a different focus. All right, let's go ahead and get started, guys. We're just going to do a simple torso twist, just back and forth. We're going to move our body around a little bit here, and then we're going to get into some shadow sparring, some other things to get warmed up before we do our kata. Nice rotation on that lower back. Already breathing, not holding your breath. All right, and I'm just going to put my staff behind my knees, just kind of pushing your knees around in a circle, one way, the other direction, opening up those knee joints. All right, now we're going to do knee in and out. Open up the hip flexor. There we go. A little bit faster. All right, and shoulder rolls, rolling backward. And forward. I'm also rolling my wrists at the bottom of the movement to open up my wrists, my forearms, and time. So we're going to move into shadow sparring. I'm going to set up our timer for 1 minute round. In shadow sparring, I just want you to use any techniques that you know. This is going to be at a lighter pace. You're not going 100%. Just moving around, using footwork, doing some blocks, using strikes. This is primarily combat bow movements. We've got 1 minute. Begin. Moving around, pretty light pace, doing common sense blocks to counters, work different grips, variety of movements. All right, time. So we're going to pick up the pace a little bit on this one. We're going to get our heart rate higher, and we're going to add in lower body kicks, knees, anything like that. We've got 1 minute, shadow sparring. Now you can also use your legs. Begin. Go a little bit faster, guys. Okay, and time. You guys should be breathing a little bit heavier now, adding in your legs there. That'll get you moving. Okay, so now we're feeling pretty warmed up. We're going to go ahead and move into the kata section of our class. So guys, we're going to go and get started with Bo Kata 4. So Bo Kata 4 is really a mastery of the basics. This is an advanced level kata, but it does not introduce highly complex or more advanced combinations even that you'll see in some of our future kata. What it does though is it's a simple form that does use angles. We have 45-degree angles. And like I said, it's the mastery of the basics. Whenever we get to Brown Chevron level and we demonstrate this kata, it's going to be incredibly powerful. I really like the kata. It doesn't have a lot of pizzazz and any spins or some things that I really like, the 360 overhead around back and stuff like that we do in future katas. But it's very strong. And we're going to get started with that. We're going to begin, guys, with section 1. So just follow along with me. And now remember, you can always do the more detailed breakdown in the lesson section. That's where I go into it, very in-depth, very comprehensive. Today in class, we're going to just do a quick passover of the kata itself and then really be getting repetitions in. Right, so we're going to begin with our section 1 of Bo Kata 4. We'll begin in our normal position with our attention stance and bow. And you raise the staff up as you're standing back up until it gets parallel to the ground. This is where we step back. And this is a back stance with a straightened leg. So it is a presentation type stance. It's the opening of the kata that is done on purpose. It's a defensive angle block. One thing here is we don't want to bend our back too much on it, okay? So as I'm going over the review of the kata, guys, I'm going to try to point out common mistakes, common errors that I see students make so it's useful to you. Okay, so bow, here, step back. Keep your back straight, but you do bend into this some. You have more weight on the back, like in the front leg is straight. Make sure you have a nice extension here. We really explode into this overhead front strike. And then it's 4 point. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then front thrust. And that's our opening sequence. So another common mistake I see made here is there should be a crescendo at the end here. There's a crescendo, of course, with our strike, with our yell, and there's 3 stacked stances. Stances that get deeper as we go. So watch my stances here. Bowing, raising, I'm here. Okay, and this straight-legged back stance. And then overhead front strikes in a front stance. I stepped out a little bit further. We do 4 points. Front thrust is even a little bit further. So what happens is my footwork goes like this. 1, 2, 3. I see a lot of students that pretty much just stay in this initial position the whole time. And they really miss the element of this layered combination and this crescendo at the end of it that makes it very, very nice. So it's just little details that will make this kata so much better. Ready. Defensive angle block. Overhead front strike. 1, 2, 3, 4. And we've got our long front stance and front thrust. Okay, we immediately look to our left and we've got to break someone's knee here. Okay, straight to the knee. It's a knee strike. Very powerful. Pulling back. Down thrust. Nice down thrust. My body's turned away from the strike. I'm looking at the opponent. I'm looking at the striking area, which is the leg, the lower body. I turn all the way into an overhead front strike. Overhead rib strike, or overhead neck, really. We're going closer to the neck. Chin, and then we have an opponent behind us. Reverse poke. All right, so that's the next part of it. I'm going to point out another common mistake here, which is the overhead front strike. So I'll show you what I'm talking about. We just finished this opening sequence. Knee strike. This is our down thrust here. We do an overhead front strike. Now guys, this is different, right? Because it's on the back side. We need to twist our body all the way into a good left front stance so that we can get as much turn into this as possible. Don't finish like this. Don't finish with your body still turned this way, but trying to turn your arm this way. That's really awkward. We've got to get our lower body transitioned as far to the left as possible to make the overhead front strike more powerful. Ready. Nice stance, right? But not too wide either, okay? This isn't a Taekwondo style stance. This is still Japanese-based, aligned front stance. Overhead, rib, or again, it's the overhead rib strike, but it's probably more to neck level. Chin strike, reverse poke. Okay, so very good job there. Step forward, overhead front strike. Again, nice front stance. Not a long front stance, but proper stance here. Okay, and then we move into section 2. Right, so section 2 is going to be another of those crushing knee strikes. This time it's a down thrust and a crane stance. Switching legs, crane stance, angle, overhead front. Pull back, push block. Pull back, overhead front strike, front thrust. And then we'll move on from there, okay? So I'm going to turn my back to the camera as well. Once more, make this simple for you to follow along with me. Let's begin at the beginning of the kata, section 1 here. Step back, defensive angle block, overhead front. 4-point, nice body movement. Step out a little bit further. We'll of course pull in first and then step out further. Look to our left, 90. Knee strike. Down thrust, full turn, overhead front strike. Overhead rib, chin strike, look, reverse poke, step forward, overhead front strike. Pushing my hand out, pushing my chest out. Good extension here on the front side of my body. Knee strike. Pull back. My down thrust, guys, remember, my down thrust needs to follow the initial angle of the preparation. So if I prepare like this at a very narrow angle, I should be striking like straight downward. But we're not doing that. It's more of a closer to a 45. So prepare like this, strike here. Okay, we're striking down the opponent's leg again, or we're imagining we crushed the knee and they kind of fell down. We're striking downward towards even their head or their torso because now their body is closer to the ground or on their knees. Switch legs. This is where we have to have balance. Angle, overhead front, so that you time it properly. Land into a front stance as you exactly simultaneously do overhead front strike. Full pullback. Push block. Overhead front strike. Front thrust. All right, and we've already, we're still in the middle of section 2. Now it's rib with a step, 180-degree turn into a horse stance, overhead rib. Overhead rib, 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 overhead rib. Overhead rib. All right, so rib striking sequence. Biggest mistake students make here is just not focusing enough on landing in an aligned horse stance. It's not easy to do, but it's something that we want to work on. All right, we're here. All right, so we're stepping in a straight line, step back, and when you turn, land to where your feet are exactly in line with one another. All 10 toes are facing the front. In your horse stance here, you're bent down fairly low. Overhead rib, overhead, a little bit of movement in these. Rib, rib, overhead rib, overhead rib. Now we go and break the knee again at the left 45. Pulling back. Down thrust, right? Now, whenever we do this, we're going to then pull the staff back in. This is something we see sometimes in traditional Okinawan Bojutsu kata, and it could be surmised that we were using a staff or a bladed weapon, we were pulling it out, we just finished an attack and then we're pulling it, but it's one of those poking or pulling back in type techniques. And it's also a little bit stylistic. There's a slight pause there after that, and then we continue on with the form. Okay, so we'll continue on from there into, I believe this is now section 3, although sometimes I'll admit I confuse the sections after teaching the form, I don't always use the sections. So from here, we're going to move on to the next section, and we're at our left 45-degree angle, and this is where we turn all the way into this front strike, or the overhead front strike. This is definitely a mistake that not every student, but most students make because they don't turn far enough into this strike. It's just like we talked about at the beginning of the kata. You've got to twist your lower body first all the way. So if you want to practice it kind of this way, ready? Twist your whole lower body, align your stance properly to our left 45-degree angle, and then just basically punch your right hand out and over a little bit and across. You're actually hitting a target. And then we're stopping it though because there's control, and then this is a kata, of course. So then make it all simultaneous. But to practice, again, do this. Turn, strike. Ready? Turn the body, strike. Now let's do it all together. All right, so that's how you do that properly. Now we turn to our right 45-degree angle. Our torso, our body's at our 45 angle here. And we're in a horse stance, and we do an overhead rib. Reverse uppercuts. And what's interesting is we have this unique angles that we're using. We had our left 45, our right 45. But now we're going to our right 90 of our original position from where we were originally facing, right? Okay? And then we'll move on from there. So I'll turn around and I'll let you guys follow along with me from the very beginning. We're getting close to finishing the kata. I'll be pointing out some other things, and then we'll be getting good repetitions in today. Hope you're staying along with me at home. Ready? Section 1. Raising it up, stepping back. Defensive angle block. This is where our layered footwork comes into play. Overhead front. 4 points. Front thrust. Break the knee, step back. Down thrust, turn all the way. Overhead, front strike, overhead rib, chin, reverse poke, step forward, front thrust, knee, down thrust, switch, angle block, crane stance, overhead front, pull back, push block, overhead front, front thrust, rib, step forward, rib, overhead, land into that good horse stance, overhead rib, rib strike, overhead rib, left 45-degree angle, break the knee, pull back, turn our body all the way to the left 45, heel is not off the ground, right 45, overhead rib strike in our horse stance, pull back, nice cross stance into our reverse uppercut. All right. Figure 8 spin, step, turn, and front strike in a left front stance. Ready, step forward, front thrust. Turn, reverse thrust. Step forward, front thrust. Step forward, knee strike. So that section is a little different, and you'll notice why. It's because you're stepping all the way into front stances, which we don't always typically do with some of these moves. And what it does is it keeps you very grounded. You're very stalwart with your movements and your stances, and you're not kind of jittery and all over the place like we see in some of our combinations that change angles quite often. This one is not. It's very linear, going one side to the other. Okay, so we'll start here again. We did our reverse uppercut from our right 45. Figure 8 spin, step, step, front strike, front thrust, reverse thrust on the same line. Step forward, overhead front strike, step forward, knee strike. Now we're going to finish the form with section 4. We step back and we do a left 45-degree angle, down thrust. Sweep, batting stance as we correct our stance, directly straight ahead now. Batting stance is just like holding a baseball bat. and as long as your ceiling will provide for you, you want it to be totally straight up and down, perpendicular to the floor. Stepping forward to your horse stance, baseball bat, back over, readjust in front of your body, high block, low block, knee strike, break the knee, down thrust, stepping forward, feet together, front strike, fold rib strike, step out, ready stance, and okay, that is the end of Bo Kata 4. At the end there, some of the most common errors I tend to see are, again, we're in a totally straight line here, but then we change to our left 45, and then we do a good sweep batting stance as we readjust to our body. Our feet are in line with one another in a back stance almost, facing the front. Now, in the batting stance, shoulders are here. My front shoulder isn't turned way over like this. It's pretty open. My body's just turned to the right 90. I step up, do an actual swing strike, bring it back in front of your body, and you make an adjustment with your hands. High, low, really good lower body twist here, torso twist, knee strike. Down thrust. Feet come together, finish these strong. Focus and recharge there. On time. Okay, so those are a lot of the important points. You'll notice this kata is just a combination of basic techniques with knee strikes and down thrusts. A lot of knee strikes and down thrusts. Really a great combination to do if you have good body movement and you're not just using your arms when you do them like this, okay? So we're going to do the whole kata all the way through. This time we're going to focus on technique. And by that I just mean really focus on placing your hands in the right position, and what body target are you hitting, things like that. And we're not so much worried about speed or power almost on this one, just technique or actual bow techniques. We're going to do it together. All right, Bo Kata 4 with a focus on technique. Begin. Whoop! Whoop! Yep. All right, good job, guys. So that was a little bit slower, just really crisp, technical. Now we're going to focus on stances. Now, we're still doing an upper body movement. Not that we're going to do it wrong, but let's have an extra focus on where our feet are. So we're going to go a little bit slower overall. Our pace will not be the exact same as you would if this was a full speed demonstration, but that's going to give us a little bit extra time to really consider where our feet are at. Most of the time, especially when we get to the advanced levels, we're like, I know how to do this now. I know how to do front stances. I know how to do horse stances. It's nothing. But if you watch your own video or yourself in the mirror, if you even just look down sometimes, you'll catch yourself. You're like, oh, wow, my heels actually weren't aligned, my horse stance really was off. Or my front stance wasn't, a Bojitsu front stance. I actually was reverting back to my Taekwondo stance or something like that. So we have these habits from other styles sometimes in other trainings that are very relevant and useful. But we want to remind ourselves to ingrain the habits where when I pick up this weapon, these things transcend or overwrite some of the other things that I've learned. And at a level, it's all going to blend in, especially in a real fighting or self-defense situation, right? Because of losing our fine motor skills, things like that. But let's focus on stances, guys, on Bo Kata 4. Bo Kata 4. Begin. Yup! 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 All right, great job. Another thing you can do on stances is if you have someone with you, ask them to say freeze out of nowhere, or just as you're watching a video of yourself doing this kata, just click pause, randomly. One thing I like to talk to my students about is if someone just took a picture at any point in your kata, someone can tell what stance you're in and what technique you're doing, right? So that's just something I like to remind people of. This time we're going to focus on speed. Now, speed isn't usually something I recommend students focus on, but there are some useful characteristics behind focusing on speed. We're going to go faster. We want to maintain our composure and the actual integrity of our movements and our stances with this level of speed. See how you do on it. Okay, let's do Bo Kata 4 with a focus on speed. Again, speed, not power. Bo Kata 4. Up! 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 Soup! All right, so maybe you got pretty sloppy, maybe you felt like you had it under control. We're going to do one more, which is a focus on power. This is really going to be more of our normal demonstration, what we're working towards. Speed will win you a little bit apparently though. So, focus on power this time. More intensity overall, realistic intent with our movements. Bo Kata 4. Up! Up! Sup. Okay, that'll get you. So we're going to do a bit of a cool down today. If you're going to keep working out, do some more classes, things like that. You can skip over this though. All right, take a deep breath in, bring your staff over your head. And keep your legs straight. Over your head. Hang down. Over your head. Pull back on your right foot. Pull back on your left foot. Pull up on your right knee. So bring it up high. Pull up on your left knee. Shake it out. I hope you guys had a really great class today. I had a lot of fun working on Bo Kata 4. Great workout, great way to practice your techniques. I love kata in general, so I will see you guys in the next class. Take care.